Okay, good evening. Welcome, everyone. On behalf of Soka University of America, thank you for joining today's event, the 8th Annual Dialogue on the Culture of Peace and Nonviolence. My name is Tetsushi Ogata. I am Visiting Assistant Professor of Peace and Conflict Studies at SUA. And it is my pleasure to be the moderator for today's dialogue event. I also have the honor of introducing our distinguished opening speaker, Ambassador Anwarul Chowdhury. To many of our Soka community members, Ambassador Chowdhury is a dear friend who needs no introduction. But since we have a number of guests joining from the public today, as well as many first-year students who meet Ambassador for the first time, let me take an opportunity to introduce him. Ambassador Anwarul Chowdhury is a former Under-Secretary General and High Representative of the United Nations. He has been a vocal and active advocate for building a century of the culture of peace and nonviolence. He was a driving force within the UN to adopt important declarations on these subjects. It was 1999 when the United Nations adopted the first landmark resolution on the culture of peace and defined steps to take to build peace. Subsequently, the UN proclaimed the first 10 years of the 21st century from 2001 through 2010 as the International Decade for Culture of Peace and Nonviolence for the Children of the World. Furthermore, the UN declared that the year 2000 was the International Year of the Culture of Peace. Behind all these declarations and resolutions was Ambassador Chowdhury, who was a permanent representative of Bangladesh to the UN from 1996 to 2001, chairing negotiations among member states, raising agenda topics on the table, and expanding the network of trust and dialogue among world leaders and civil society leaders. We should also know that the groundbreaking UN Security Council Resolution 1325 on the role of women in peace and security was passed in 2000. In particular, because of Ambassador Chowdhury's initiative, as the president of the Security Council at the time, to bring global attention to the voices of women. It is truly our delight to welcome the champion of the culture of peace to our dialogue event tonight. Over the years, Ambassador has given so much to SUA. Ambassador has offered learning clusters on the culture of peace on this campus for many years. In 2014, when SUA initiated the annual dialogue series, it was Ambassador who chaired the first year's event and subsequent years as well. And most recently, Ambassador was a recipient of the inaugural Soka Global Citizen Award in 2020 to recognize his lifelong work and achievements for peace, nonviolence, women's rights, and equality of all peoples. He has more and long list of accomplishments that I cannot possibly summarize today, but let me conclude by sharing the news that last year, Ambassador Chowdhury co-authored a book with SUA founder Daisaku Ikeda. The title of the book is Creating the Culture of Peace, a clarion call for individual and collective transformation. Ambassador, we are delighted to welcome you back to SUA on this important occasion. Everyone, please join me in welcoming Ambassador Chowdhury.
Thank you. Thank you, Tetsushi, Dr. Ogata, for your very kind introduction. Well, I'm very happy to be back to SUA, albeit virtually, but it is wonderful to see the fountain in the background as you were speaking to us. Well, at the outset, let me wish all of you a very inspirational, International Day of the Girl Child. Today, October 11, is the day proclaimed by the United Nations to highlight the need for support to the girls all over the world. And today's girls are tomorrow's women. So very important that we focus on girls as we envisage a society with full equality and participation of women. So that's why I said inspirational rather than happy, because there's not much to be happy about the situation of the girls. So let's get inspired by that declaration of that day. I would say that, start by a little bit. I feel very nostalgic when you invited me to come and speak here. And particularly, this is the 8th annual dialogue on the culture of peace and nonviolence. And so I feel like going back to my association, not only with the dialogue, but also with the university as a whole. First time I went there, I will take a few minutes if you don't mind. In 2005, I was the first commencement speaker for the first graduating class in 2005. And that is the beginning of my relationship of love and respect with SUA. And then, of course, in 2007, 2 years after, I was invited to have a series of lectures, 2007 and 2008, in the month of October. I went there for maybe a week or 10 days. And then we had series of, even I remember that I had 2 workshops on intending students who want to join the United Nations. So how to do that, and what are the intricacies of the recruitment process there. So I had wonderful, there were 50 people who signed up. So we had to divide them into 2 classes. Otherwise, it was too big a group. And then, of course, 2009, which Dr. Ogata mentioned, 2009 was the year I started teaching the Culture of Peace course as a learning cluster course in every January. And that had been such a wonderful experience that I cannot tell you, both for me and my beloved wife, who has left me earlier this year. And she and I enjoyed our stay there, the love of the students, love of the faculty, love of all kinds of functionaries of the university in every way. So that brings me, makes my heart very soft when I speak of my days and Mariam's, my wife's days together in the SUA. And then, of course, as we were, I was taking my classes every January. In the year 2014, Ed Fizel, Dr. Fizel was then the dean of the faculty. Now, of course, the president of the university. We conceptualized, because Ed was eager to have an event in a big way every year to promote the culture of peace and nonviolence. So we started talking, and we came out with the background and the objective. And that, I think I would recommend maybe that the first concept note should be put on. As a matter of fact, all concept notes should be put on the website of SUA. I think this is a major, remarkable, and if I recall, in 2014, the first one, the wonderful, intellectually very capable people from all parts of the United States came to join us, and we had a beautiful. So I would like to, and I think this is necessary as we prepare for the dialogue every year. I would take a little bit of your time to read the background and the objective that Ed and myself put together. And so bear with me for reading that out. But I feel very, very attached to those texts. So the background says, in recent years, the Soka University of America has attained an enviable credibility as an institution focusing on value and integration of the culture of peace and nonviolence as part of the educational experience that is available for the students in its liberal arts curriculum. With global citizenship as the core objective, as highlighted in its mission statement, as well as diversity of background and nationalities of the students and the faculty, has made the SUA a highly respected forum for exchanges on key issues that are of relevance to the future of humanity and to the progress of humankind. The leadership of SUA has been very supportive of such exchanges and has been facilitating that since the institution's establishment in Los Angeles area nearly a decade and a half ago. But now we had a big anniversary this year. Let me then read about the objective. That was the background. With this background, the SUA would like to launch an initiative to provide a platform for dialogue on the culture of peace as an essential force that humanity needs to embrace in the best interest of our world. The Pacific sphere of the United States has already played a leading role in international peace and security, and has contributed to the defining and refining of the intellectual contents of such a dialogue. In taking this initiative, SUA is proud that its founder, Daisaku Ikeda, has been in the forefront of global endeavor, advancing for more than 3 decades in 2014 through his writings and speeches the importance of education for global citizenship and the cause of peace. With this inspirational perspective, the dialogue will seek to outline avenues and direction for incorporating the culture of peace and nonviolence into all spheres of the educational experience. The dialogue will be held every year as an independent, unbiased, non-partisan intellectual forum. So this is the background that I wanted to share with you. And I would like to say that the then president, Dr. Habuki, who reminded me of the mission of SUA by saying that SUA is teaching with the intention of creating a steady stream of global citizens. That struck me so wonderfully, and I believe that is what Soka University is doing. I believe that with that background, I can say that when I first became the ambassador of Bangladesh to the United Nations in 1996, I got to learn a little bit about the efforts of UNESCO in promoting the culture of peace, or creating the concept of culture of peace. But I found that that is so narrowly restrictive to UNESCO that the world is not benefiting. At that time, we were coming out of the Cold War, and we were thinking, what could be done to make peace more sustainable? Because UN Charter has peace as is its main core activity, but it has been trying all these years, nothing happened. And Cold War showed that we may not have the real Second World War type world conflagration, but at the same time, we were not having a peace worldwide. This is proxy wars were going on between the two superpowers all over the world. So we were thinking how to, and I said culture of peace where we transform ourselves. Unless we are transformed individually as a peaceful and non-violent person, we cannot make a peace globally achievable. So that is when it started brewing in my mind, and I said, this concept has to come to the United Nations. And so in 1997, I wrote to Secretary General at that time, Kofi Annan, saying we need an agenda item of the UN General Assembly called Culture of Peace. And that is when it started. We had big fights, always. Culture of peace somehow has been receiving all kinds of negative vibrations, because I think people who are not willing to see peace gets a long standing position in the international relations or global activities. I think they are trying to create obstacles to the promotion of the culture of peace in the best possible way. But that is a different thing. So let me mention that that is when, and as you mentioned, Tetsushi, in 1999, the UN General Assembly, adopted by consensus, without any reservation, the UN Declaration and Program of Action on the Culture of Peace, and that is the document, the little booklet, which contains that declaration and program of action. And UN Charter came out of the ashes of Second World War in 1945. And the Culture of Peace Declaration and Program of Action came out after the conclusion of the Cold War in 1999. So these two documents are the most prominent documents of the United Nations, which puts peace as the core activity. So there are other resolutions where peace is mentioned, peacekeeping is mentioned, peace building sometimes is mentioned, but peace as an individual initiative or as the core of human activity is not mentioned anywhere. So that is why we believe that this is the reason we believe there is a tremendous value on this program of action. So in 2019, we had the 20th anniversary of this document. And this is the 20th anniversary edition of the Culture of Peace. And if any one of the participants, panelists, or listeners is interested, they can send, I think, to Tetsushi or Yuya an email. I will send it to all of them individually. And also, there is another little gift for you. This is the Culture of Peace coat pin, and which mentions about the logo of the Culture of Peace with raised hands of the Culture of Peace. And so this will also go to each one of you who will ask for it from me. And I believe that with that anniversary and with the starting of in 2012 of the high-level forum on the culture of peace has been a major boost to the culture of peace among the member states of the UN. So that's why it's very important that, and then lots of the things that I am saying now has been, as Tetsushi mentioned, about this book with President Ikeda and myself wrote, calling it Creating the Culture of Peace, a clarion call for individual and collective transformation. So that is a very important point. While we focus on individual transformation, we believe that very soon that individual transformation will become a collective transformation. And I will tell you a little bit why I am saying that. But here I would like also to add one more thing that I have mentioned in the book, in the epilogue particularly, which has been connecting the events which happened after the book was published in Japanese initially. And that is the institutional transformation. That is very important. Institutions, global institutions like the United Nations, the World Bank, non-aligned movement, the Group of 77, all these institutions need to also transform itself, because the old way of doing business is no longer there. And UN 75th anniversary was just observed last year, and we still do not have any sustainable peace to talk proudly about. You know, we see things, the countries and regions which were even peaceful, like say now what is happening in Ethiopia and their problem with Eritrea and Tigray and all these things are now Secretary General and Ethiopian Prime Minister are in a sort of verbal fight with each other, and that is not a good thing to happen. So I believe that this institutional transformation is very, very important. Culture of peace should be made part. Even peacekeeping missions have gone to many parts of the world. As of now, there are 18 peacekeeping missions in various parts of the world. But peacekeeping missions has been there. Cyprus has been there for ages, I think 4 decades. The UN observers in Kashmir, between India and Pakistan, has been there since 1948. So all these things are not, they are maybe preventing violence or war, but they are not able to transform this warlike attitude between the parties to an atmosphere of dialogue, reconciliation, and conflict resolution through peaceful means. These are the important things that the UN needs to, and the culture of peace will create that opportunity. Even 10% or 5% of the budget of the peacekeeping missions, if those are devoted to the promotion of the infrastructures for peace, promoting culture of peace in the countries which were signing a peace treaty after the peacekeeping mission is over and all these things, but there is nothing like that. So that is why we believe that this is important. Let me mention quickly four concepts which I believe are very essential. And one of them, of course, is in the title of your dialogue on the culture of peace and non-violence. So non-violence is a very essential element of the culture of peace. As a matter of fact, they are very integrally connected. And all these elements, and then comes, of course, the concept of oneness of humanity. That is a very important thing. We should feel that we are one world, one family, one humanity together. And that is very important. Unless you have that, you cannot bring in the culture of peace in the true sense. The third element is, of course, the global citizenship. And that is absolutely, absolutely essential, that the culture of peace is, the global citizenship actually is a pathway to the culture of peace. Unless you feel like a global citizen, you cannot be a person who becomes seriously and sincerely a believer in the culture of peace. So these four elements: non-violence, oneness of humanity, global citizenship, and of course, the fourth one is militarism and militarization, which is really killing our planet and people in that planet. That is the, so President Ikeda had been mentioning for ages about nuclear disarmament, a nuclear weapon-free world. And we believe that along with nuclear weapon, also all kinds of disarmament measures are necessary. To even a simple small arms is also killing people. So we should be able to bring that out very clearly. So that is the, and the militaristic policy and global relationship is also very dangerous. Like we see now, this submarine deal between USA, Australia, UK had created such, why do we need those enormously expensive military machines while people are suffering not only from COVID, but many other things. And then there are four primary groups of people, of humanity, which are involved in promoting the culture of peace. First, of course, I will say women, and also include girls, as I said at the outset. Today's girls are tomorrow's women. So they are integrally, and the Sustainable Development Goal 5 also mentions about empowerment of women and girls very clearly. So I believe, and we have seen during the last 22 years, the women had been the major force behind advancing the culture of peace in a big way. And I believe that that is what we should, and culture of peace provides an opportunity for asserting the equality of participation of women and men. And as you will see, this document has 8 action areas, and their action area number 4 is the equality between women and men. And notice it, we put women mentioned before men. So that is a very small but important assertion. Second group of people is children, because children need to be the foundational group of humanity for promoting the culture of peace, because that is where it is said, neuroscientists say that as early as 5-year-old children starts developing whether he or she will turn out to be a non-violent person or a person who knows how to live in a peaceful, non-violent way. So the violence, the tendency of violence starts growing in the minds of children at that early age. So we need to start there. We need to start with the families. Well, the parents will be the main sort of injector of the peaceful living, and then will come the teachers, and then communities, and then of course in many of our cultures we have the joint families where intergenerational connections are very important. So that is the way to move forward. And then the third group, of course, is the activist group, the young people like you, our panelists today. You are the generator, the transformation that you will have as a child, as a young people, you will be turn that transformation into an activism. So you will say that simple way, and I will tell you the simple way we feel that my students in my class had been told again and again that culture of peace, to inculcate culture of peace is not a major challenge, but you have to be a believer in that. And then finally, fourth group is individual. Wherever you are, whatever is your profession, I find Jonathan will talk about medical profession today. So these are the things that we should remember, that it does not matter whether I am a lawyer or a doctor or something different, but you can always bring in your work, in your profession, in your communications with colleagues, the issue of culture of peace. And even you can start with your family, with your teachers. My students, every summer they would go to back home, and they say, we went back to our high schools or middle school, and then told the teacher about the culture of peace and how this can help the students of their classes, schools. So this is very important. And this booklet in Article 8 of the Declaration mentions very clearly the role of the professional groups, that every way, individually. So there is, I would like to say that civil society has been really amazing in promoting the culture of peace. And I have worked with the civil society coalition based in New York called the Global Movement for the Culture of Peace. And we bring together about 20 culture of peace minded organizations together, and we work with other groups, even member states, even secretariat, to promote the culture of peace on an annual basis regularly. Let me end by saying that recently, not so much recently, for some time, we have been, I think 2018, we had the involvement of the city of Ashland and Oregon in, in the northern part of United States, northwestern part of the United States. Ashland city and city, the people working in the city, along with the mayor's office, the police commissioner, and teachers, and everybody in the art and culture, every actor came together to establish Ashland Commission on the Culture of Peace. So that is shows that how a city can generate the culture of peace as a big element in their work. And I was there in 2019 for a global conference, and there I was amazed to see all the important people from the city, starting with the state legislative representative to the mayor, to the police chief. Everybody came together to profess their objective of culture of peace. And I would say that this year we were very delighted. There is an organization in Hiroshima called Mayors for Peace. And that Mayors for Peace was established by Mayor Akiba and who was a big promoter and is still continues to be a promoter of nuclear disarmament. And then the current mayor became a very, very proactive mayor, and he has added culture of peace as number 3 pillar of their vision statement. New vision statement that they had the Mayors for Peace has 8,000 cities as its membership. So this is a big thing, and I am so delighted by the mayor came to speak at our high-level forum on the 7th of September this year. But this is a big area of growth. I think the involvement of the community, involvement of the local authorities will be wonderful for promoting the culture of peace. So I believe that this is very important. And let me conclude by telling you, the students who will be listening, who will be participating, students and alumni both. The culture of peace is simple by the way you interact with other people. I think culture of peace is so integral to us. Anything we do, anything we think, any consultation we have, there is always a place for the culture of peace. So I think this is the simple thing, simple way of treating each other with respect and with pleasantness. It will open the door for you to promote the culture of peace in a big way. So I think I have taken more than my time, and I would like to thank all of you for giving me this opportunity. I felt very nostalgic when I was asked to come and speak here. And I felt that this is the whole, my relationship now. Of course, I feel very sad with the absence of my wife. I was recalling, and I wanted to share this with all of you. Let me end by saying this, that culture of peace is not a simple thing. Not a simple thing means it takes time to grow, because we are talking about individual transformation. So don't be disheartened by the slowness of the thing, but it will prevail, it will stay. And that is what I say. I believe the culture of peace is not a quick fix. It is a movement, not a revolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, Ambassador Chowdhury. Your talk always makes the history and movements come alive. Thank you for sharing your inspirational words, and we look forward to a time when we can invite you in person on campus. So now let me invite our panelists for tonight. We have here today 3 alumni and 3 students who will share their stories related to the theme, living the culture of peace during this unprecedented time of change. The first speaker is Hinako Irei. She's a recent graduate from the class of 2020. She's originally from Okinawa, Japan. And when she was at Soka, she took a learning cluster on the culture of peace from Ambassador Chowdhury. Now she's currently pursuing her master's degree in psychology at Claremont Graduate University. Hinako, it is great to have you back here. Thank you for joining. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Ogata. So good evening, everyone, and good morning, good afternoon to our international audience. My name is Hinako Irei, and I am honored and humbled to be able to speak alongside some amazing SUA alumni and current students today. I want to thank Ambassador Chowdhury and SUA for this opportunity to speak on the culture of peace that is very dear to my heart and a crucial component of my life. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank Mrs. Chowdhury for her immense amount of kindness and love that she had shared with me and many SUA students throughout the years. Although she may no longer be physically present with us on this earth, her spirit continues to lovingly embrace each one of us with warmth and grace. For me, she is the anchor of the movement of the culture of peace, and I carry with me her sense of duty to support Ambassador Chowdhury in his lifelong commitment to the culture of peace. So to begin my speech, and as the first alumni student speaker tonight, and as Ambassador Chowdhury's former student in his Culture of Peace course at SUA, I would like to explain to the audience what the culture of peace is, because it is slightly different from just saying peace. And I would like to establish a foundation based on a common understanding of the culture of peace as we progress through the event today. In order to have a fruitful dialogue, having a common understanding of the key topic of the conversation can be crucial. Therefore, I will touch upon 5 important points of the culture of peace, which I compiled from the documents and various speeches that Ambassador Chowdhury has delivered in the past, and also from the United Nations Declaration and Program of Action on the Culture of Peace document itself. And also reiterating some points that Ambassador Chowdhury had shared with us in his opening remarks as well. And after I lay this foundation, I will end my speech with a personal story. So first, the culture of peace primarily requires a strong determination for self-transformation, which consequently results in a collective transformation. Many people treat peace and the culture of peace synonymously. However, there's a subtle difference. Generally, when people refer to peace, the expectation for action is put on those in decision-making role or in higher power. However, when we say the culture of peace, the expectation for action is put on each one of us, because the cultivation of culture requires everyone's participation, regardless of the power hierarchy. Each individual is important to the transformation required to secure and embed the culture of peace in our world, which leads to collective transformation and global solidarity. Second, the 8 areas of action in the United Nations Declaration and Program of Action of Culture of Peace, which are education for peace, the promotion of sustainable economic and social development, respect for human rights, equality between women and men, and as Ambassador Chowdhury mentioned, this is intentionally women and men rather than men and women. And 5, democratic participation, 6, tolerance, 7, the free flow of information, and 8, disarmament. These 8 cover all key areas of international concern. After the UN Charter, this is the only major document of the UN which focuses on peace in a most comprehensive manner. As you can see in the logo of the 20th anniversary commemorative edition, it illustrates many hands shaped like doves in the color of the Sustainable Development Goals. And this logo captures the essence of the culture of peace. Third, women's equality and participation is of core importance in advancing the culture of peace. Ambassador Chowdhury often reminds us that when women, which is half of the world's population, are marginalized, there is no chance for a world to get sustainable peace in the real sense. One of my favorite quotes by Ambassador Chowdhury is, quote, "Without peace, development cannot be realized. Without development, peace is not achievable. But without women, neither peace nor development is possible," unquote. It is also important to note that since the United Nations was founded, there has never been a woman Secretary General, despite there being numerous qualified candidates from around the world. And to learn more about women's role in prevention and resolution of conflicts, peace negotiations, peace building, etc., I encourage you all to look into the UN Secretary Council Resolution 1325 on women and peace and security, which Ambassador Chowdhury took a pioneering role in its adoption. Fourth, Nonviolence, which appears in the title of this annual dialogue at SUA, is important to the culture of peace. Culture of peace as a concept means that every one of us needs to consciously make peace and nonviolence a part of our daily existence. We should know how to relate to one another in a non-aggressive manner and without neglect. A child's tendency toward either violent aggressiveness or nonviolence begins to take shape as early as age 4 or 5. The early childhood development and the task of educating children and young people to find non-aggressive means to relate with one another is of primary importance. Lastly, global citizenship is a pathway to the culture of peace. The notion of global citizenship is a familiar one for SUA students, since the founder of the university, Daisaku Ikeda, is also a big proponent of this concept. He outlined the 3 conditions for global citizenship in his 1996 lecture at Teachers College, Columbia University, titled Thoughts on Education for Global Citizenship. The 3 conditions are: 1, wisdom to perceive the interconnectedness of all life and living; 2, the courage not to fear or deny difference, but to respect and strive to understand people of different cultures and to grow from encounters with them; and 3, the compassion to maintain an imaginative empathy that reaches beyond one's immediate surroundings and extends to those suffering in distant places. Ambassador Chowdhury strongly encourages all educational institutions to offer opportunities that prepare the students not only to live fulfilling lives, but also to be responsible and productive citizens of the world. And educators need to introduce holistic and empowering curricula that cultivate the culture of peace, in short, the education for global citizenship. With that being said, the educational environment that I was able to be immersed in at SUA, which also provided me the opportunity to take the Culture of Peace course instructed by Ambassador Chowdhury, was transformational in my development as a person and informed how I carried myself outside of SUA. In 2018, I attended and supported the annual Hiroshima Peace Forum, an annual youth forum where students from Hiroshima, Nagasaki, Okinawa, Osaka, Tokyo, and Hawaii gathered in Hiroshima to discuss peace. I have been attending this conference almost every year since I was a high school student, because the high school I attended back home in Okinawa was a regular participant. My dedication to support the conference was recognized, and I was invited to accompany a group of students from Hiroshima for their study trip to Honolulu, Hawaii, the following year. There, I was able to visit the Pearl Harbor Memorial and talk with the last existing survivor of the Pearl Harbor attack. As a descendant of the survivors of the Battle of Okinawa during World War II, and having been to Hiroshima many times, I have heard stories of Japan's victimization under the US attack, but I had never heard the story of those impacted by Japan's attack. So I asked the Pearl Harbor attack survivor if he resented Japan, given that his loved ones were killed in the attack. He answered with a simple no and said that we must acknowledge the past, but put in the effort to move forward so that the same tragic history will not be repeated. I had asked the same question to a Hiroshima atomic bomb survivor, asking her if she resented the US, and she gave the same exact answer. My grandfather, who is a survivor of the Battle of Okinawa, also gave the same answer. The parallelity of the answers provided me with a striking insight that whether your country politically won or lost, it ultimately does not matter on an individual level, because you still lose your family, friends, and many loved ones. The atrocity of war allows no true victory. I shared this experience and the importance of the culture of peace with the students from Hiroshima. And a few weeks after we returned to Japan, I received a message that one of the students happened to be a valedictorian of the high school in Hiroshima and delivered a speech during their graduation ceremony. She mentioned me and the message of peace that I shared with her in front of the whole school and families attending the ceremony. This was my first powerful experience of embodying the culture of peace, the ripple effect of self-transformation to a collective transformation that started with a single heart-to-heart dialogue. Through my speech today, I hope that I was able to articulate what the culture of peace is and why it is important to be an advocate of the culture of peace. My hope is for all of you to take this information, put it in a box, put it in your heart, and think of how you can implement this concept in your daily life and empower to share this gift in your own unique way. Because each one of us hold a powerful capacity to be agents of peace and nonviolence in this movement of the culture of peace. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Hinako, for your beautiful stories coming from Okinawa, Pearl Harbor, and Hiroshima. Thank you so much. So now let's invite Nandini Choudhury from the class of 2012. After she graduated from SUA, she worked for global health nonprofits, and she completed her master's in public health at Boston University. She's currently in New York City, working as a data analyst for the Arnhold Institute for Global Health at Mount Sinai School of Medicine. She will share her talk, SUA is my solid foundation. Please welcome Nandini.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Ogata. And good evening, and of course, good afternoon and good morning, depending on your time zone to everyone. Thank you so much for the chance to be here with you virtually. As was shared, my name is Nandini, and I'm a proud member of SUA's class of 2012. And I actually also like to acknowledge today, in honor of Indigenous Peoples Day, that I live and work on the Napi land. I would also like to take a moment to express my deep gratitude to all those who contribute to SUA, especially our donors, without whose support I would not have been able to attend SUA. And before I start, I also wanted to actually share a quick anecdote about the first time I met Ambassador Chowdhury and his wife at SUA. And it was a very brief encounter in our first time meeting. And I remember kind of mentioning how everybody on campus would ask me if we were related, since we happen to share the same last name, and we're not. Yes. But I will never forget how Mrs. Chowdhury immediately responded and said, "Of course, you're part of our family, and you should tell them that." So in that small interaction, I really felt like I really see what it means to live the culture of peace. So just to share a little bit about myself, I grew up in New Delhi, India, where I saw the immense disparities in every aspect of society all around me on a daily basis. In Delhi, you see sprawling malls catering to the city's elite, and within walking distance, a slum where everyone is scraping by to survive one day to another. The education system I grew up in just focused on rote memorization and encouraged young people like me to become boxed into narrow potential career options. I was really drawn to SUA because I could not see myself fitting into one of those boxes, and to SUA founder Daisaku Ikeda's vision in founding a university where education was in service to those who did not have a chance to receive a university education. So I'd first like to explore the somewhat intense question, what does it mean to live a contributive life? So for starters, I'll make a disclaimer that I definitely don't have the answer to this question figured out. And to be completely honest, when I was asked to share at this event, my first thought was, oh no, they asked the wrong person. I really don't work on the culture of peace. And on reflecting further, I realized that this stemmed from a mistaken belief that our career defines solely how we contribute to society. And this was certainly what I felt as I graduated from SUA and started working in the nonprofit sector. I think I immediately thought that in order to live a contributive life, I have to work in the nonprofit world. And thanks to the incredible training that I received at SUA, to view things from an interdisciplinary approach, to think critically, ask questions, communicate different ideas, and learn from individuals from across the world, I found myself drawn to public health. I loved how it allowed me to use all this training and the foundation at SUA and to not just see health as a biomedical issue. However, what I'm learning as my class approaches its 10th anniversary of graduating from SUA is that it really is not the career path that defines how contributive our life is. So I'd like to share briefly something that I experienced in this past year, which is, as I'm sure many of you may have heard, the nonprofit world, global health, and international development are still filled with so many of the complex challenges, power dynamics, bureaucracy, and fundamentally don't always put people at the center. It's common and easy to feel jaded when the reality of this work can be far from the idealism that draws many of us to it, and when its unintended consequences can actually cause harm to people. I experienced this deeply last year when a nonprofit in Nepal that I had been working with for 5 years underwent so much upheaval amid the COVID crisis, to the point that a staff member from a marginalized community lost their life. In that situation, everything that we had worked for seemed pointless and hopeless. That painful situation taught me that the biggest contribution I could make in that time actually had nothing to do with my skills as a public health professional or data analyst, much less with my title in the organization, which wasn't a senior position at all. Rather, the biggest thing that I could do was to show up for my team members as we somehow navigated the most human struggle to rekindle hope again and work towards rebuilding an organization even more deeply rooted in respect and equity. The second theme I'd like to explore is learning to experiment with dialogue. Now, I know in the SUA community, we hear this term a lot, and often I don't even know what it truly means. While I was living in Boston before I moved to New York, I had the opportunity to participate in activities at the Ikeda Center for Peace Learning and Dialogue, which was also founded by SUA founder Daisaku Ikeda to build cultures of peace through learning and dialogue. And a shout out, some of our incredible SUA alumni also work there. So in 2019, I had the chance to participate in the dialogue project that the center was hosting. The idea was to experiment with the power of dialogue and to see what kind of transformation it would have in our lives. It paired students and young professionals with an academic in the greater Boston area in small groups of 3 and 4 people. Our assignment was to meet regularly over 4 to 5 months and to engage in a sustained dialogue. I was in a group together with 2 other young women and the wonderful Dr. Bernice Lerner, who is a scholar who studies the Holocaust and whose mother actually herself is a Holocaust survivor. So to be really honest, I went into that experiment with this very almost academic or intellectual approach, thinking that, you know, we would be asking Dr. Lerner, or Bernice as we came to call her, these deep questions about ethics and human rights and about the Holocaust. But actually what ended up happening was this became a deeply humanizing experience where we just really got to know each other. And to be honest, by the end of it, it felt like we were just really good friends who were getting together to have some really deep conversations about life. So during one particularly memorable session, Bernice shared with us a difficult personal situation that she had recently gone through and asked us, these young women, you know, what we would have done had we been in her shoes. I was really amazed by her humility and openness in doing so, and even more amazed by another of my dialogue partner, who's another incredible young woman, her wise and mature response to the question. So what I really learned about dialogue through this experiment was that dialogue is intentional. It's not just sort of superficial conversation. And as actually Daisaku Ikeda says, dialogue is something that we need to make time for. And that dialogue is humanizing and equalizing. So as I shared before, I walked into that conversation or dialogue thinking that, you know, Dr. Lerner particularly was someone, you know, who I was almost intimidated by all her achievements and felt like almost like I was interacting with someone I would take a class from at school. But by the end of it, it really felt like we all had this deep human connection that we all shared and could learn from each other. And I also realized that for me personally, dialogue is something that I want to continue to experiment with and continue to really experience the power in my own day-to-day life. And in particular, you know, even with this wonderful dialogue experiment, I felt like I learned so much and gained so much out of it. But still, right, sort of living in the greater Boston area, you could argue that there were still many deep-rooted similarities and maybe our ways of thinking. So I think the next sort of level of dialogue that I would want to learn from and experiment with is learning to dialogue with people who have differing opinions from myself. And I also wanted to share that I was recently able to apply some of the things that I learned through this experiment with dialogue. So I was participating and helping plan a recent Juneteenth celebration at my workplace, and was able to incorporate a breakout dialogue session that I actually learned directly from an encounter at SUA with the late Dr. Vincent Harding, who was a historian, author, and civil rights activist. So Dr. Harding would actually always start any interaction with asking the person he was meeting for the first time where their maternal grandmother was born. And as we started our dialogue breakout session with sharing responses to this question, it was really incredible to see even coworkers who we interact with on a daily basis to really learn something deeper about their family, their roots, and see where they were coming from. And it was a really incredible and powerful experience. So to conclude, for me, culture of peace I am learning is not so much about what I do in my career, but how I live my life and show up for those around me. On a personal note, I'm still trying to figure out what next in my career, but I really believe that with SUA as my solid foundation, I can continue to build on this incredible foundation no matter what I do next. And circling back to my first question of what it means to live a contributive life, this is something I want to keep asking myself throughout my life. On a daily basis, that means actively challenging the disbelief that I don't have a role to play or that the society's problems are beyond my sphere of influence, and rather to ask myself, how can I contribute to creating something better where I am right now? So with that, I'll just say thank you all once again so much for this opportunity to share, and back to the organizer. Thank you.
Thank you, Nandini. Thank you for sharing your powerful personal experiences for the experiment of dialogue. Now let me invite Jonathan Junqua from the class of 2016. He's doing his Doctor of Osteopathic Medicine, Master of Public Health at Touro University, California. And he's looking to become a pediatrician in the future to help youth and families reach their full potentials. His talk today is Culture of Peace in Medicine and Medical Training. Thank you for joining today. Let's welcome Jonathan.
All right, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, and thank you for having me to speak with you all today. Welcome everyone, and thank you for coming. And also thank you to Dr. Chowdhury for such a wonderful opening statement for the panelists here today. Everyone is absolutely amazing, and it's going to be a hard act to follow for the first two speakers for sure. But first, once again, my name is Jonathan Junqua. I'm a current fourth-year medical student and public health student who is hopefully going to have a job next year as a pediatric resident. So what I would like to talk about today is kind of my approach for the culture of peace and key moments and how it manifested or was applied to my journey to and through medical school so far. So first and foremost, SUA's curriculum served as the foundation for me to develop what I consider a critical part of promoting the culture of peace, communication. I thought it would be poignant to mention parts of the United Nations definition as follows, which has already been mentioned, but humor me for just a moment. First, respect for life and promotion of nonviolence. Second, promotion of human rights and fundamental freedom. And third, commitment to peaceful settlements of conflicts and to meet the developmental and environmental needs of present and future generations. All of these points of the UN definition, as well as those not included, require the ability to have dialogue with as many people as possible who have an even larger variety of objectives, goals, and priorities. So how did SUA help with the small class sizes and the emphasis of the majority of SUA courses on communication meant that you could not hide, and this is in the best of ways, and had to learn these skills within the classroom. Whether it was through in-person discussions, papers, or presentations, the curriculum pushed us to grow to become more effective in this crucial area. This being said, this is within what we affectionately called the Soka bubble. What matters more is how this training applies in the real world, or at least after SUA. So I'd like to jump into some of my experiences in medical school, as well as just outside. So let's start off with the first few days of my medical school career. We were assigned to groups of 6 people, and in these groups, we were to have the same schedule for small group lectures, quizzes, and exams. For these quizzes and exams, we had to take the exams on our own for a personal grade, and then work as a group in the same on the same exam for a group grade. This comes together to form our final grade for the assessment at hand. Now, as you might imagine, this is a group of different personalities who have just met, who are all high-strung, facing the prospect of their grade being dependent on the success of the group for high-stakes exams. So some of my group mates were quiet, others had a tendency to micromanage, another tendency to dominate conversations, and all of us were fairly stressed. I tended to be more on the quiet side, but used my experience in discussions and dialogue that I had applied through SUA the best I could. Although there were some rocky start discussions and crossed arms in the beginning, we grew to trust one another and became a close team. Fast forward 3 years later, a portion of our group had come back together and we shared some laughs about these few weeks. Then one of them said to me, "Your role never changed though. You are always the moderator and the peacemaker of the group." This statement reminded me of how important being able to have discussions and dialogues are in high pressure situations. For me, it was academic, but also it was exciting for me to not only be able to use these skills to promote trust and essentially peace within our group, but that someone else was able to experience and recognize this. Now, another moment came recently during my clinical rotations. I had the opportunity to do a 2-month summer internship at a children's hospital where I had the fortune to do a rotation this year. The internship previously had a large number of high schoolers in it, which made me one of the older interns. As we had some group projects and presentations, I ended up interacting with a number of them relatively closely. After the internship ended, I never expected to see any. Then one day, I was at my rotation and I was approached by one of the scribes. Lo and behold, she was one of the high school students from the internship and had remembered me from 4 years prior. As we talked, she mentioned how she had been really shy in high school and was very quiet at the internship. However, when I worked with her and the other students, I had built up their confidence and left a big impression on them. I don't know exactly what I had told her, but I was really heartened by the fact that even interactions that don't occupy a significant space in your mind can have a profound effect on someone else. It reminded me that even brief conversations can be important to help others reach their full potential and can serve to support the culture of peace. My last moment that I would like to share happened while volunteering as a facilitator for a project aiming to fight childhood obesity and instill healthy habits for children and their families. I was paired with a family comprising of a mom and twin boys. As we talked about nutrition topics like increasing fruit and vegetable consumption or trying new foods, getting active, and portion sizes, I could see how hard work to ensure these kids had access to healthy choices. She worked a job, the twins had an older son who was heavily involved in sports as twin boys, and still managed to consistently make it to the weekly meetings held for the program. In addition, mom raised concerns about whether their finances could actually support the changes being recommended by us. It became clear that what she needed in the moment was not necessarily more information on how to make healthier choices, as it would be just overwhelming and unhelpful in the setting of an already stress-inducing routine and situation. Instead, we opted to have conversations about these topics in the lens of building healthier habits rather than pushing for strict adherence to these recommendations. It was important to alter the message being conveyed to make sure that mom and her children gleaned the most out of our meetings, rather than feeling even more of a sense of obligation and worry. These interactions helped me reinforce the importance of meeting a person where they are for dialogue. and to take the time to truly understand a person's situation before making any sort of recommendations or advice. Simply communicating your message without acknowledgement and adjustment for another person's specific situation is talking at someone rather than talking with them. Finally, shifting the lens of the conversation can help build trust and understanding that is so important for the success in the physician-patient relationship in the future. These three moments that I highlighted today only really scratch the surface of the many ways that the culture of peace can and have manifested in my medical journey. I chose to focus on communication, which is one of the first steps in supporting a culture of peace, as it is one that I found continually emphasized over the course of medical school. However, there are so many other important steps and concepts, like policy and reform, social justice, and equity, that must be considered. I am also sure that the way I engage with the culture of peace will change as I gain experience and progress further into my career, and that it can look completely different for a person in another profession or stage in their life. I believe that each and every person has their own integral way of supporting the culture of peace. I'm fortunate to have found mine in my journey through medical school. So once again, thank you so much for having me today, and looking forward to hearing the other speakers later on.
Thank you, Jonathan. I can already tell that the future patients of yours will be so lucky to have you as your doctor. So looking forward to a time when you get the job. Thank you. So now I'm excited to introduce our student speakers. We will invite both Subina Thapaliya and Natsuha Kataoka together as representatives of the Student Movement for the Culture of Peace. The acronym is SMCP. Subina is currently a senior and Attorney General of the SMCP, and Natsuha is a junior and president of the SMCP. So please welcome Subina and Natsuha.
Thank you, Professor Tetsushi. Good evening, everyone. It's my honor to be in this space with Ambassador Chowdhury, from whom I have always gathered energy and inspiration to strive for my active engagement with the culture of peace from every conversation I had with him at SUA. First, I would like to express my gratitude to organizers, panelists, as well as all participants for making this event successful and providing me an opportunity to share my story. Today, I would like to share with you all about my 3 years journey of action and growth at SUA. Before that, to give you a context on what drove and urged in me to seek a hub of intellectual growth, I would begin by sharing a story from when I was 12 years old. One evening, my father borrowed a book titled Niti, that translates to policy, from his friend's place. The book was the collection of policies on different realms of individual life and society from 3 noble leaders, Chanakya, Vidur, and Bhartrihari from ancient India. Before Niti, I had read all the books from my father's shelves. All of them were very inspiring, as well as they were mostly about works done by social leaders to resolve issues surrounding people-wildlife conflicts in Chiton National Park and political and social turmoils during the 10 years long civil war in Nepal. While none of those stories that I read earlier informed me about how people who took those actions for social transformation become who they were and what they did to become capable of it, Chanakya's story in Niti described his journey of becoming a wise leader. The book walked me through his hard work, dedication, and determination in pursuit of knowledge that would make him capable of bringing social transformation in his hometown. Chanakya's story guided me to pursue a path of knowledge for being capable of bringing changes that I want to see in my own village. 7 years later, that inspiration leading to my hard work and dedication towards pursuing wisdom brought me all the way from a small village in the southern plain of Nepal to Soka University of America, a hub to pursue my journey of action and growth. I arrived at this hub of intellectual growth without anything but a passion to learn and grow, to become able to bring change. Little did I know before that SUA would not only be a platform for acquiring knowledge, but also a hub to transform my knowledge into action. Whether it is in classroom or in the cafeteria, My encounters with ideas and action of my friends driven towards bringing change through different activities on campus inspired me to join those efforts. The Student Movement for Culture of Peace, SMCP Club, became the first hub for me to transform my urge to change into action. I joined the club as an officer in my first few weeks at SUA. After finding it as a platform to join a network of global citizens who strive to actualize the culture of peace by supporting the UN action. The next year, I got nominated as the president of the club. During these 2 years of active leadership at the club, I, along with other club leaders, created a platform for club members to learn about nuclear disarmaments and threats of nuclear weapons through activities such as attending off-campus workshops hosted by Nobel Peace Prize-winning institution, Nuclear Age Peace Foundation, on importance of nuclear disarmament and ways to actualize it. And also we organize symposiums on campus to engage SUA students with leaders working actively in the field of nuclear disarmaments. My engagement with enthusiastic leaders at the SMCP Club built my courage to take actions on another important social issue that I am concerned about, that is sustainable development. In my second year, I started working on improving the sustainability effort on campus by serving as SSU Sustainability Committee Chair and Student Program Coordinator for Campus Sustainability. For 2 years, I have been conducting administrative tasks for the Campus Sustainability Committee, such as assessing sustainability practices, preparing the sustainability tracking assessment and rating system report, and implementing sustainability plans and practices on campus. The action-oriented leadership activities that I have been pursuing at SUA have transformed my feeling of helplessness about all social issues around me for not being able to do anything about it to the drive of actively seeking solution towards my issue, towards any issue that I encounter by joining the networks of people with similar interests. My journey at SUA has laid a solid foundation of courage in my life to pursue wisdom so that I can bring change, compassion-driven urges of social transformation into action. With this foundation, I am confident to further my career in the field of environmental management and economic development, focused to work towards poverty alleviation in marginalized communities in the global south. Thank you so much for hearing about my story. Now I would like to invite Napa, current president of SMCP Club, to share her story with all of us.
Thank you, Subina. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I am Natsuha Kataoka. I also go by Napa. I'm a junior concentrating in humanities and social and behavioral science. I am more than honored and humbled to share my story, as well as my determination to learn to live as a global citizen. And I would like to begin my story by looking back at September 2021, last month. When I was appointed to the president of the Student Movement for the Culture of Peace, SMCP, I shivered with fear because I thought I was utterly incompetent. As I mentioned, I am concentrating in humanities and social and behavioral science, and I mainly focus on Japanese literature, film studies, and cultural anthropology. I have not taken any international studies courses or any topics related to the culture of peace. So therefore, immediately after Subina, the Attorney General, kindly asked me if I could take on the leadership position, I was anxious about how I could lead this club, having studied nothing related to the subject of peace in my past courses. At the same time, I was too afraid to decline as well, so I accepted the request to be the president. This incident last month led me to re-examine the concept of culture of peace and what it means to me and how I can contribute to SMCP in my own way. The term peace actually itself has long been in the back of my mind because of my upbringing. I was born to a family that practices Buddhism as Soka Gakkai members, so I knew about SUA since my childhood that the university is founded upon the Buddhist principles of peace, human rights, and the sanctity of life. So even before coming to SUA, I especially liked this university's mission statement, which is to foster a steady stream of global citizens committed to living a contributive life. which touches upon another vision, global citizenship. And now that I study at SUA, I pursue my academic passion in literature and anthropology. And although humanities concentration may not seem to be directly related to building a culture of peace, in my opinion, I reached the conclusion that humanities, peace, and global citizenship are intricately connected. And so as it is very clear to us, today's world is so inextricably connected that the world peace cannot be the work of one person, one party, or one country. Peace must be the result of the cooperative efforts of the whole world. And in this collective endeavor, each participant with the conviction to dedicate their life to the greater movement for world peace is a global citizenship. And what this means is that anyone with the conviction and passion can be a global citizen. And our university founder, Daisaku Ikeda, once said that peace is a competition between despair and hope, between disempowerment and committed persistence. This is the very reason why SMCP tries to create a transformation in the consciousness of the students, a transformation that gives rise to the genuine confidence that, oh, there's something that I can do. And students may be just students right now. We are not US officials, ambassadors, professors, or diplomats. However, we are the people who are the most passionate about peace and the most interested in peace, such that our movement can flourish into a powerful momentum for the culture of peace. We are global citizens because we have an abundant hope for better world and determination to be at the movement's front line. With that being said, our club, SMCP, has the following goals throughout this academic year. There we go. Okay. Our goals, first one is to conduct study sessions on peace proposals by our university founder, Daisaku Ikeda, and Union Sustainable Development Goals. Second one is to collaborate with other clubs on campus and off campus to find complementary interconnections with different areas of interest and activities. Third one is to create a safe and inclusive space for students to share their dreams and passions toward establishing a culture of peace. The final one is to encourage the club members to commit themselves to engage in dialogues and nurture their sense of responsibility as future global leaders. So through my dedication to this club, SMCP, I hope to contribute to the cooperative, collective momentum to create peace. I keep immersing myself in literature, anthropology, and other academic disciplines with the purpose of finding how humanities can best serve the greater cause of peace. And I keep striving to transform myself from a passive participant of society into an active, ambitious global citizen who always finds ways to contribute to my surroundings. That is all from SMCP. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Subina and Napa. Thank you for sharing your powerful words as leaders of the SMCP. We are grateful to have you on campus. Just a quick note to all the participants. We have the final speaker. We're gonna run out a little bit of time, but if it's okay, we're gonna ask you to stay a few extra minutes. We have the final speaker. Her name is Maya Hidana. She's a first-year student from Israel, which means she's been here on campus for only about 2 months. Born and raised in Israel, Maya will share her story about the perseverance of hope despite the ongoing conflict from where she comes from. So please invite Maya.
Hi, hello. Thank you so much for the honor to speak and to share my story to all of you today. I will start. Being born to a small ethnic nation state can sometimes feel like growing up in a big, dramatic, occasionally embarrassing, but unconditionally loving family. You share history, traditions, and most probably a genetic code with your friends, neighbors, peers, and teachers. You can fight with complete strangers in the middle of the street over a parking spot, and minutes later hug each other and apologize because at the end of the day, they are family. The family's needs are above all. Its members are often suspicious of strangers, and in hard times, you can assure yourself you will do anything to protect it, anything. Growing up in Israel was not an abnormal experience because this was the only reality I knew. In school, I was taught about my Jewish ancestors and all of the travesties they had been through. The texts in history class informed us of how they lived in exile for thousands of years, and that we are so lucky to finally live freely, without fear of persecution, in our ancestral Holy Land. We had yearly missile drills and were trained to recognize suspicious objects that might be bombs in public spaces. At home, every time I mentioned my dream of living abroad and exploring the world, I was warned I would be hated and chased wherever I go because I'm Jewish. I would sit in the living room every evening and watch a severe-looking news anchor announcing today's tragedies and terror attacks with details and images I was too young to comprehend. The obvious conclusion that most people would reach from this conditioning is that we, the Jewish people, are all we have in the world. We will forever be ostracized and hated, and we're still in a constant struggle of survival for our lives with the neighboring Arab countries and the Palestinian people. So every person must play their part, enlist in the army, pay their duty to society. There is no time or place for empathy or humanizing the other side because we are fighting for our existence. In 2016, my best friend Zohar decided to go study abroad in Germany. We were both 16, and it was such a brave and unconventional choice. I admired her for it. She would experience more of the world and widen her horizons beyond the life path set for us here in Israel. She was always the most intelligent, interesting person I knew. Zohar was well informed about current events and world politics. She would make me watch documentaries with her about important social issues and historical events and get me into the hippie classic rock from the 70s that her father liked. She was the person that opened my eyes to some of the more unpleasant truths that were often brushed over at our school. How in all our wars, we continued to conquer land and deport the Palestinian families that were living there, destroying their villages and cherished family properties that had been standing there for hundreds of years. Every day, Israeli Arab citizens are being discriminated against by the government and their fellow Jewish citizens. Israel still has control over Gaza's electricity and water supply, and almost its entire population lives in poverty and in unimaginable squalor. I couldn't stop asking myself, are we really the victims? All this information was a lot for a teenager to process. It's hard to comprehend that your identity, nationality, and family are the culprit in so many human suffering. At first, you don't. It does not line up with the facts ingrained into you. I already knew so many people injured and traumatized by racially motivated terror attacks, including my own mother. They were attacking us, and we had to protect ourselves. What other way is there but staying united and giving ourselves up for this cause? 1 year after Zohar left, I got a late night call from her. My mom called me this morning. I got my draft letter. Oh, congrats! Because that is what you're supposed to say in this situation. At the age of 17, every Jewish Israeli citizen should expect to receive this letter. Phrased as a polite invitation to start the process of enlisting to the army, it was actually anything but. In Israel, serving in the military is as mandatory as paying your taxes, protected by the law and courts, and any refusal is punishable by a jail sentence. Maya, she continued, I don't think I can do this. I'm not going to do it. I paused for a moment. What do you mean you're not going to do it? I already made my decision, so don't try talking me out of it. I'm going to refuse. Refusing to serve in the military is a political and public act meant to bring more awareness to the general public. When she returned to Israel, Zohar asked me to help her writing her refusal statement that would go out to the press, stating her opinions on the conflict and pacifist reasons for choosing to refuse. I found myself once again admiring her courage. She was giving up so much to try and make a change, and thanks to her, I started reevaluating my own intentions. I was so caught up in this bubble of like-minded people, friends and family, driven to finally make a change for the better, I forgot the real world around us. And when the refusal statement we wrote together was published, I was reminded of everything and everyone. The comments online were abysmal. Grown adults were hurling insults and death threats at an 18-year-old girl. They were calling her a morally corrupt, disgusting traitor. Why don't you just go back to Nazi Germany? You'll fit right in. She was incredibly calm in the face of all this, but I couldn't help but feel guilty. These were my words too. On the day of her drafting, some friends and I accompanied her to the military base, joining the demonstration the refusers organization had set up. I remember seeing all of the kids our age coming in for the beginning of their adult lives, accompanied by their excited parents and siblings. It is a rite of passage, a child becoming a warrior in just one small step through the gates of the military base. I felt so distant and miserably out of place, terrified for my friend and suddenly unable to relate to these excited, proud families. Some people walking by our small group of protesters were cursing and spitting at us. Some just gave us disapproving looks. When Zohar made that step through the military base gate, we all cried for the first time in this whole process. Despite how horrifying this experience was, I decided I couldn't keep deceiving myself and everyone around me. I did not want to go to the army. I no longer believed in what it stood for and didn't want to contribute in any way to the suffering of human beings. This newly held belief I did not dare say out loud. I was terrified of confrontation with my parents, or for that matter, pretty much anyone around me. A bit too afraid to go to jail, I managed to get a legal exemption from the military. The duty and blind loyalty I was supposed to have towards my country and my new ideas of right and wrong were clashing. I felt like a traitor to my own kind, but I also felt like I had blood on my hands. I didn't know what to make of my identity anymore. Am I still Israeli even if I haven't served my duty to protect my country? If I constantly and incessantly critique my country? If I feel gut-wrenching guilt and shame to identify as one? How about if I feel guilt and shame about feeling all this guilt and shame? This past May, Israel had another war with Gaza. It was 2 weeks of constant missile attacks by both sides, riots and lynching in the streets. Many people called for unity and peace. Many people called for more violence. I spent the entire 2 weeks inside the house, not only because it was dangerous to go out, but also I couldn't stop watching the news. As the severe-looking news anchor announced wave after wave of missiles, I was glued to the screen, having wave after wave of panic attacks. I've never felt more guilt-ridden, sick and disgusted to my core to be there. 200 civilians were injured on the Israeli side. 13 were killed. 2 of them were children. 1,900 civilians were wounded in Gaza. 256 were killed. 66 of them were children. The number of casualties differs on each side. One has considerably more power, resources, and infrastructure than the other. But at the end of the day, they're all inseparable, all one body of casualties from the war. 269 human beings robbed of their humanity. I'd arrived here at Soka University of America this August, 3 months after the events of this most recent war, and 3 years after I made the decision not to enlist to the army. By this point, I thought I had given up on the idea of peace forever. I thought I had given up on my country forever. After years of growing up in the shadow of war and blind hatred, watching the conflict reignited again and again in a vicious cycle, I grew hopeless and cynical towards it all. I came to Soka searching for a new identity, one not defined by borders and loyalties, but by my humanity. I wanted to relinquish my identity as an Israeli citizen and become a global one. But soon enough, I became familiar with the values and philosophy the Soka education system is founded upon and realized how wrong I was. Becoming a global citizen doesn't mean giving up on any other citizenship you may have. It means holding onto your past and unique identities and using them to understand and hold compassion towards others. It doesn't mean leaving your community's problems behind and replacing them with abstract, larger scope issues of the human race. It means doing your best to promote and contribute to a culture of peace wherever you step foot, however daunting the task might be, one step at a time. It took me 18 years to come to the conclusion that I don't want to contribute in any way to the culture of war and violence in my country. It took me exactly 5 days at SUA to understand that being passive in the face of conflict is not enough. I need to contribute to transform my education and compassion into action, or else it would all amount for nothing. In a joint appeal to the youth of the world for resilience and hope, Daisaku Ikeda and Adolfo Perez Esquivel wrote, "The two of us have lived through the storms of war and violence of the 20th century. These experiences drive our incessant efforts to expand the bonds of friendship among peoples across ethnic and religious differences. We now feel compelled to reach out to the youth of the 21st century and to entrust them the task of holding high, with courage and pride, the torch of friendship, unity, and diversity." Thank you so much for my time here.
Thank you, Maya. Thank you so much. Thanks everybody on the speaker panelist. I understand that we are past time. It's already past 8 minutes. And if I take the liberty of suggesting extending a time a little bit to open up Q&A for 10 minutes rather than closing the session right now. So tentatively, we can say we close the event for anybody who needs to take off because we promise it's until 6:30. But if it's okay with the panelists, let's stay through 6:50. I'm gonna make a hard stop at 6:50. So open Q&A for 10 extra minutes. And those of you who are on the audience side, you can raise a question by raising your hand virtually, or you can submit questions through Q&A box by typing your questions. Is it okay, the panelists, to stay 10 extra minutes? Okay. So the floor is open for anybody who wants to raise questions and then take this opportunity to interact with our students, our alumni panelists, or with Ambassador Chowdhury. You know, I suggested we stay for extra 10 minutes, but if no question comes, we can end. Okay, we have
Elizabeth.
Okay, was a comment.
Okay.
So if I may, then rather than 10 minutes, it would be 5 minutes. If I can ask one, hold on, there's one person. Okay, so one person is raising a question. Kim Hor-to. We are going to unmute you. Please share your name, background, and address question, please. Please unmute.
Hello. Good evening or good morning. My name is Kim. I'm now in Pakistan. I have a question for Ambassador Anwarul Chowdhury. As you all are aware, the situation in Afghanistan is evolving very rapidly, and I would like to hear Ambassador Chowdhury's take on how can NGOs in Pakistan contribute towards the culture of peace in Afghanistan, because Pakistan's NGOs do have many strong links with Afghanistan. Thank you.
Thank you. Shall I come now with the reply? Well, I think you have raised a point which is very pertinent these days, because in Afghanistan, after all, I think all of us want the people of Afghanistan to have a peaceful and stable condition of living. And it is, I think, as believers in the culture of peace, it is our responsibility to help them. Despite what are the political factors, human beings need to have support to continue their peaceful living in that troubled country. I believe that it will be useful if the NGOs, be it from Pakistan or from any other part of the world, to start supporting the efforts for education of both girls, both boys and girls, because the boys have been allowed to come in, but the girls are not still being allowed to go into the school. I think that is the most important, essential elements of the Afghan society that has to be connected with the reality of today's world. The current Taliban sort of arrangement may not be able to accept according to their old philosophies, but they have to realize, I think that is the effort that NGOs should make, to say that let us open up the schools for the girls. So I know there will be difficulties, there will be objections, but with the support of even there are a number of NGOs, national NGOs, local NGOs in Afghanistan who are willing to team up with the NGOs from outside to promote the girls' education, without making it like a political statement. But it is very important to say that your society, your community, your country benefits from the girls' education. And that is very important. And otherwise, you will be sort of living in a condition where the international community will be sort of avoiding you. So it is good for your own country, good for your own people, good for even your own administration to accept the reality of the situation. And then, of course, through education, we can bring it the elements of human rights, elements of equality between women and men, but education in the right direction should proceed first. So please, Kim, if you have opportunity of talking to Pakistan NGOs, please tell them to start developing relationship with the Afghan authorities or Afghan local NGOs to promote girls' education as much as possible. I believe that that is the first step which is necessary to promote the culture of peace in Afghanistan.
Thank you, Ambassador. Because of time, let me suggest that we have one anonymous question come in. This is a question for Maya. And then if I may use this question as a way to end, let me read this out loud. Question for Maya. Amazing talk. Thank you so much. I would love to hear the moments at SUA where you reflected and developed your new identity as a global citizen. I'm deeply inspired how you embrace your identities. So I'm going to ask Maya to address these questions. And after that, very quick word from each of the panelists to share your moments when you discovered your identity as a global citizen. And after everybody speaks, let's conclude today's event.
Thank you for this question. It was in the first week, the orientation week here. We were given an assignment to read Daisaku Ikera's 1996 address, where he talked about the 3 principles of being a global citizen: courage, wisdom, and compassion. And I don't quite remember what the wording was, so apologies. But I remember in this moment, especially the courage part, I interpreted it as like the wisdom to recognize the problems, the courage to face them. And suddenly it dawned on me that I strive to call myself a global citizen. I strive to live this like contributive life, but inside, in my head, I'm like, oh, I've given up on my country, on my home. I've given up on the hope for the future generations, and it kind of crushed me for a moment to understand with myself that I have given up on it. And it was kind of like a 180 degrees turn for me.
Thank you, Maya. So now if I may ask other panelists to share any moments when you felt your new identity as a global citizen, very quickly in 20 seconds or so, or you may share your recommendations to your fellow alumni or students who are trying to discover your new identity. So let's have 20 seconds each, if it's okay. I know it's quick.
You should read out the names of each one so that they volunteer.
Okay, so in the order of speech, Hinako, and then Nandini next.
Sure. Can you? Okay, good. Yeah, this is not an easy question to address in 20 seconds, but I would say for me personally, my identity as an Okinawan and having opportunities to express that identity at SUA through, I play a traditional musical instrument from back home called sanshin, which sounds like a banjo, but yeah, so like I think having that environment where I had the opportunity to share my identity, but also think about how I fit into the global scope and how I play a role in this society has been, yeah, crucial for me to in this process of thinking more about my identity.
Thank you, Hinako. Nandini, please.
Yes, thank you. For me, I think the biggest sort of, I think where I learned more or expanded what it sort of meant to be, to me, what it means to be a global citizen and understanding more really came from interactions with other students and alumni, of course, and classes. And of course, you know, from on the intellectual side from classes, of course, made me always really critically think and expanded my mind. But I think some of the sort of unforgettable moments of really understanding what it means to be a global citizen came from interaction. So for example, my roommate and best friend is from South Korea, and you know, we grew up in completely different countries, very different sort of situations, but we would just spend hours and hours talking about all kinds of things, you know, from very mundane to very deep questions about life. And yeah, just through those kinds of interactions, I think I learned a lot.
Thank you, Nandini. Jonathan, please.
I have to second Nandini on this one for sure. The interaction with the students, kind of in orientation, hearing about all the stories, why they came to SUA, what their background was, all of that really made the rest of the world seem much closer and much more personal and relatable in a way that it wasn't possible previously. And the other moment that was really striking was study abroad, and when we all came back from study abroad, because everybody had stories of everywhere they went, and just all the people were all tied together by this experience, whether we went to different countries or not. So I think that was a really important moment.
Thank you. Subina, please.
Yes, for me also, I think interaction with all people at SUA, because initially I remember during my beginning days at Soka, I was so much concerned about my identity as being different from other people who I see. And then eventually, like when I hear stories from other students, particularly even in classes, like they were sharing what they have prior experience from home. And then that made me realize, oh, okay, I have also a unique background. And then all my friends and all the people who I interact with can benefit from that things. So like, so it's not about identity being from particular country, but we share a common space where we are interested in some particular topic and we bring our own ideas. And that's where the global citizenship comes, like diversity of ideas and experience. Yes.
Thank you. Next, Napa, please.
Yes, to be honest, I've even forgot when my new identity as a global citizen was nurtured in the first place. But to me, every day, every single day is an opportunity for me to realize that I am a global citizen through my introductions and other opportunities to talk to others. And also every day is an opportunity to get maybe like different nuggets of ideas on how to strive to be global citizen. And so, yeah, maybe tomorrow will be a fresh opportunity to understand who I am and how I can contribute to my community as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody on the panelists and Ambassador Chowdhury for speaking, sharing your words of wisdom, inspirations, and hope. Time has come to end this 8th annual dialogue on the culture of peace and nonviolence. And thank you, everybody, for joining extra minutes. Let us send our applause virtually to all the panelists. We may not be able to see everybody's applause, but please know that applause is ringing through the air. Thank you so much. And then for the panelists, if I may ask you to remain online to take a moment of group photo. So thank you, everybody. Thanks to the participants coming from all over the world, coming from US, from Asia, from Europe. Thank you so much. Okay, so here we have all the panelists, right? I'm gonna ask Yuya to take a group photo. Is this okay, Yuya?
Yes, thank you so much. That was just so inspiring to hear all of you speak. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, anything is fine. You can make anything you want.
So let me know, like Eric Kimura, if we should wave.
Yeah, how about like just
gallery view? Every should.
Yes. I'm bringing a gallery view. Yeah, just maybe wave. You don't have to wave it, but stay. Have your maybe hand next to your face, or yeah. Sounds good. Okay, 1 second. I'm gonna take a few. I'm gonna get my okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Just 1 second. Yeah. Okay. That's good.
Ready?
Yeah, that's good. And also, oh, sorry, yeah. 写真撮りました？大丈夫ですか？
大丈夫。
Yeah, you are on the microphone. Well, I think that he disappeared. Okay, so I think this is it. Thanks, everybody. Yuya, is it okay?
Not yet. I think not yet.
Yes, we're good. Yeah, thank you.
Good.
Thank you. So sorry. Yeah.
Thank you so much. We'll be in touch again about the report and then news of this event.
Yes, and follow up.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Ambassador. And thanks to everybody. Have a great rest of the day. And good night to you all.
And I really wanted to say that I enjoyed each presentation. Wonderful. You were all great. Super. Very good. Very good.
Thumbs up.
And of course, Dr. Ogata's moderation was wonderful.
Thank you.
Looking
forward to seeing you, everybody on campus.
All the best.
All the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Chowdhury. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.